In a moment, we hear from the SAS sniper who's failed to clear his name over possessing a so-called war trophy. Judy Murray probably dreamed of one of her boys winning Wimbledon when they were still in the cradle, and she's the best-known tennis mum in the world as well as a top coach. But the tennis mum part has often been hard. Last Saturday, her dream came true when Andy Murray beat Novak Djokovic in 3 straight sets. But less than a week later, she's in a Tower Hamlets playground, working for Set for Sport, the charity she founded to get children and their parents moving.
So who's going to go first? First, second, third, fourth. Right, go.
Despite the time of her life at the Wimbledon final, Judy Murray is back to work, trying to inspire the next generation of sports stars. It's less than a week after Wimbledon, and here you are out in your day job.
Yeah, back to work.
Back to work.
To a bit of normality.
Back to work. And do you think that children are in desperate need of a kind of introduction to sport?
Yeah, very much so. I think probably in most schools there isn't enough opportunity to do physical exercise.
But what the head teacher Kamal told me is there's so little green space around here, there's very little place, even if you wanted to put tennis courts.
Yeah, the problem with the tennis court obviously is the size of it, and I think over the last sort of 20 to 30 years we lost a lot of public courts right across the country, and I think now that you know, the country's going to go tennis crazy, certainly for the next foreseeable
well, let's hope so.
Few months, and there are going to be many kids and adults wanting to try tennis, and not all of them will have the opportunity to do so.
Right now, though, there is another job vacancy, someone to take over the Lawn Tennis Association, which has come in for a fair bit of stick. And no one knows more about tennis than Judy Murray. So would she put her hat in the ring?
I think I'm more of a tennis coach than a kind of business executive. I think that role needs somebody who has a huge passion for tennis and an understanding of tennis, but it doesn't need somebody who can run a huge organisation, and that's really not for me. But there does need to be a sea change in the way the LT is run, does there not? Yeah, I think you know, it has a huge budget, a £60 million budget, and you know, that represents a huge opportunity as well. You know, it's one of the wealthiest governing bodies in sport, and you know, I would like things to get better. I would like it to become way more inclusive. I'd like.
Is it too elitist just now?
I think it still is. I think some moves have been made to make things better, but there's still such a long way to go. There's huge swathes of the country where you can't find tennis courts, and particularly in Scotland.
Yeah. On that point, if you don't want the job because you're not a business person, what would be one of your key pieces of advice? I mean, they come to you for advice, or would you offer your advice?
I'd probably wait until they came to me, but would be very happy to be involved. You know, this is about getting to.
And she is forthright about the failure to promote women in the sport.
We have a big issue with numbers of girls playing the game. I mean, you have to make the sport attractive, and once you get kids in, you need to be able to retain them. And I think female coaches are crucial to keeping young girls in the game.
I mean, you've talked in the past about sexism towards you, but do you think there is sexism in the game?
Well, I think if we want to get more women playing sport, we need more women in decision-making roles.
You know, prior to Wimbledon, you've said yourself there was all this stuff about, you know, and I, you know, would read things like, you know, the spitting cobra in a denim jacket. You know, all that
nice
stuff about, you know, the obsessive mother, the tiger mother. That was always negative. Now, of course, Andy's won Wimbledon. Well, thank goodness.
Yeah, I'm all right now.
You're all right now. But that whole stuff, even going back to the Boris Becker stuff of saying you were around too much.
Yeah.
I mean, would they have said that about a father?
No, I don't think so. I think what used to upset me about that kind of criticism was that it was always written by people who didn't know anything about me and didn't know anything about my family, and you know, there was this sort of suggestion that I followed Andy around the world telling him what to do, and nothing could be further from the truth. But I do think that I came in probably for more criticism because I was a mother of sons, whereas if I'd been a mother of daughters or a father of sons or even a father of daughters, I don't think anybody would have batted an eyelid.
I have to ask you about the John Inverdale remark about Maria Bartoli. Well, you know, her father must realise she wasn't a looker, so she would have to fight even harder. What was your reaction to that?
Well, that was a huge gaffe. But Marion Bartoli, she is an incredible example of someone who has made the absolute max out of herself. I mean, you have to take your hat off to her. She's quite incredible. I've known her since she was 14, and I never at that stage would have picked her to be a top 20 player, and never mind a Grand Slam champion. Her dad has done an unbelievable job with her.
And she has worked incredibly hard, which makes that kind of that reductive, kind of dismissive. Well, I think it was reductive and dismissive of John Nightingale. I couldn't believe he was actually thinking that.
Yeah, I don't know why he said it, and I bet he's wishing that he hadn't now.
I bet he is wishing he hadn't now. On the question of where tennis is at the moment as well, it's also incredibly political, because you'd be too busy to notice this, I think. But in fact, Alex Salmond held up a saltire behind David Cameron. How do you feel about the whole political issue being brought into Andy's game?
I'm not sure that I've noticed that it has really, and I mean, you know, we're very patriotic Scots, as you know, but we're also British, and tennis has never been a Scottish sport. It's always been a British sport. You can't represent Scotland at tennis, so Andy's always played for GB. So that's
very funny though, because Gary Lineker said it's maybe just as well that we haven't had the referendum, because if we'd had the referendum, we might still be looking for a champion we could call our own. I mean, you will obviously have to make a decision how you vote, because clearly you put you're a voter in Scotland. Are you still making up your mind up, or have you made up your mind?
No, I can't say that I've made up my mind. I think there are a lot of things that you need to be reassured about, and the main thing is obviously the economic sustainability of the country if it were to be independent.
So for the woman who has nurtured her boys from toddlers with tennis rackets to a 26-year-old Wimbledon winner, has Andy Murray only just begun.
It is the strongest era ever in terms of men's tennis, and the top four are really probably the top four players of all time. So winning a slam is a very tough thing to do, but you know, he's proved that he can do it. He's done it twice now, and I'm sure, knowing him, he won't rest until he's won a few more.
Judy, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.